Chris, it's nice to have you on. I guess first question we'll start with was, how did you kind of get involved with the armed services? How did you decide that this kind of career path was yours?
uh, well, I guess it's more, I didn't decide, it was kind of decided for me. Probably I decided it because I was too busy being a big man on campus for one semester. And I actually flunked a couple of courses. Well, the draft board looked at that and said, "You've been in school 2.5 years and you only got a little over two to show for it. We can take you at any time." And so, knowing that I was going to get drafted, I just went and joined. I joined because I just wanted to go see what this was like and see something different. And my last semester in school, I had messed up academically. And so I said, well, eh, I'll go see what this is like. And that's what I did.
Oh, good there. So where were you at in school when you had made that decision?
You mean what university?
Yeah, what university were you
I
doing?
was in Grambling State University. It was known as Grambling College at the time, way back in the Cro-Magnon era when I went to school there. And I guess I was in the middle of my junior year. And I was studying theater. I wanted to be an actor. But when I went into the service, I met so many people who had master's degrees in theater and the like, and they were telling me how hard it was to get jobs and that sort of stuff. And so I think when I really made a decision after I got out the Army about career path is when I got out and I came back to Grambling, and I was able to go to school on the GI Bill and my student job. I was probably one of the last people in the whole wide world to put themselves to school without student debt by the GI Bill and a student job in the scene shop at the theater. And when I came back, after hearing all these horror stories about all the guys I met in the Army who had advanced degrees in theater, they had a new major in mass communications. And I said, oh, that sounds better. And I'll get a job in TV and everything will be hunky dory and I'll make a lot of money. It doesn't work like that.
So you had mentioned that you were in the Army. What was your date of enlistment? What day were you enlisted into the Army?
It was September of 1969.
So you enlisted in 69. When was your date of deployment then?
I went to Vietnam. I got there January 4th, 1970. And I left January 4th, 1971.
So full 365 days then in Vietnam, huh?
Yeah, a tour duty then was 365 days unless you got hurt. Nowadays, these guys and ladies go for a tour duty, and it could be 6 months, and they come back home and train 3 months, and then they're deployed again for another 8 months, and then they come back home and train 3 months, and then they're deployed again for another 6 months. And so I think it's a lot more wear and tear on these young people nowadays than it was then. Everybody knew you were there for 365 days. And if you could stay alive that long, you got what was called short. And you'd hear somebody say, short, I got 90 days. And somebody say, that's not short. I got 24 days. And then you'd hear somebody holler, I got 2 days and a wake up, and the whole idea was to get short, which meant you had a short amount of time to do in Vietnam. And if you got out of Vietnam, wherever they sent you after that, you thought you would be okay. We call it coming back to the world.
So leaving the world for the first time and heading out into Vietnam, what was kind of your first realization of, oh my goodness, I'm going to be here for a full 365 days? What was kind of
It
your
was
wake?
when I landed at the 90th replacement. The bluest sky you ever saw is in Vietnam. Uh, the whitest clouds, the grayest clouds, the blackest clouds, the greenest grass, the greenest plants, the reddest dirt, The colors, even for somebody like me, who's color deficient, I don't see color that well, never have. But even the colors for me were bright, and you would look at the sky and helicopters would waka 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 waka, and not buses, but yeah, buses. They have buses too, jeeps, trucks transporting people, and things were zooming back and forth. And you said, "Wow, I'm in Vietnam," and you better wake up real quick because that's where you were.
So obviously there was a major difference from your normal life back at home and the real world, is like as you like to call it, and life in
Well,
Vietnam.
not the real world, just the world.
Just the
Okay,
world,
just
right?
the world.
Just
Mm-hmm.
the world. So there was a major
Mm-hmm.
difference between the world and Vietnam. And on your days off, what were some of the most
There
shocking?
were no days off. Yeah, it was easy to lose track of time, and that was a good thing, unless you kept a short timer's calendar. Some guys had calendars and they mark every day, but that seemed self-defeating to me. It was easy to get lost because 7 days a week, you didn't know it was Sunday, you didn't know it was Wednesday. You got them, you did the same thing every day, and so it was easy to sort of lose track of time. And it was a good thing too, because then you didn't dwell on it, that you've been there 6 months and you still had 6 months to do.
So what was your first task in the military when you got over there in the services? What was the first job that they gave you? Did you enjoy doing it?
Well, after basic training, they send you to what they call AIT, Advanced Individual Training. And they sent me, thank God, not to infantry school, but for some reason to truck driving school, where we drove big, huge trucks, tractor trailers, 5-ton dumps, that kind of stuff. And because I was a little bit late getting to the 90th replacement, because I didn't know if I was coming back, I took a few extra days. So that was listed as AWOL. And it was really funny. They lined us up in a big room, and I think just about everybody was AWOL. And if you were less than 30 days AWOL, they would just find you, bust you, and send you on to wherever you were going, what unit you were going to. And if you were more than 30 days AWOL, they sent you to the Presidio, which was the jail, stockade. And they might sentence you to 6 months for being AWOL 31 days. And you did that time in the jail, and then they still send you to Vietnam, and they call it bad time. So if you were a 3-year enlistment person and you had to do 6 months in the stockade, then you were going to do 3 years and 6 months in the service, because they call that bad time. It doesn't count against your time that you were there. So I was a few days late, so they just fined me $26 for 2 months, and I was an E3 private first class, and they bused me back to E1, and I was supposed to go to a transportation unit. That was what my orders were as a truck driver, heavy trucks. And I'm glad I didn't, because those guys pulled JP4, which is helicopter fuel, which is quite explosive. And you could see the remains of those trucks on the side of the road. Sometimes they were pulling ammunition. I mean, just like a big tractor trailer here, you'd have a trailer full of ammunition behind you and a canvas top on the truck. I mean, there's nothing to protect you if a rocket hit it and it all started to explode. And you would see burnout shells of these trucks that were transporting things that had been attacked. And when I got there, since I was supposed to go to what did I say? A trucking? It wasn't trucking. Transportation unit. They sent me to an engineering unit, and that meant I drove big dump trucks. We paved roads, and it was fortunate for me in that the same roads we paved during the day, they drove on at night. The enemy drove on at night, and they didn't attack you as much. The most that you would have in the back of your dump truck, which you did have a big, we called it a headache board, a big metal board that went over the canvas part of the truck. So when they loaded you with asphalt or rock or whatever, it didn't fall on your head and give you a headache. So um, they didn't shoot at us, and there was nothing to explode. You were carrying asphalt or base rock or gravel or something like that, and so they said, "Oh, let them go. They're just building the roads. We won't bother them as much." We were not a strategic target unless we were trying to put up a bridge that they didn't want put up.
Right. So you're helping you, helping them, and helping the whole effort. That's kind of like they talk about.
Well, I think that's part of any war. You hear them always talking about we're going to go over there and build the infrastructure, and we're going to do that, and that's what our mission was in the 20th Brigade Engineers. So I was lucky. I felt I was lucky. I didn't go to a transportation unit. Otherwise, I'd have been driving one of those big trucks pulling helicopter fuel or ammunition or something. And I had seen what had happened. You could see this on the side of the road as you drove by what happened or something like that. And there wasn't much left of it. It was just a rusted hull.
So that
So
was
you didn't want to drive that if you didn't have to.
that was almost like a target on your back then, in a sense, is what you're
It
saying.
was. They guys in the transportation unit called heck. They really did.
So your line of work then in the service, building roads for not only your purpose but theirs as well. Were there any specific challenges to that? Any obstacles that you guys would run into on a daily basis or weekly basis in that job?
Nothing other than construction. Sometimes you had to move dead bodies from the side of the road or something like that. That was an unpleasant task. Um, it's something to see dead people just laying on the road. Men, women, children, soldiers. That's really eye dropping if you've never been around that kind of stuff before. So I think a lot of what I saw in the war was, I think, the result of war, not the actual action. There were some guys who were like 24/7, you know, out there like this shooting at people and being shot at. That was not my Vietnam. We always said everybody had their own Vietnam. Um, there were guys who typed in an air-conditioned Quonset hut for the colonel and made radio calls. And I have a picture of one of them somewhere where a rocket came in through the roof and landed right in the guy's lap and killed him. So you get killed doing nothing. I mean, it's not. I don't mean doing nothing. You were part of the war effort, and you might have been making radio calls for the colonel or typing up his reports or that kind of stuff. And so you think you're not in danger, but if your name comes up on the roll and the rocket comes through the roof during a mortar attack or a rocket attack, that's it, and you're done. And I saw that happen to people.
So, like you had mentioned, everyone kind of experienced their own version of Vietnam. Your version,
Mm-hmm.
did that have any greater experiences or teaching lessons for you as you grew throughout the years? What did that teach you?
I think the biggest lesson I took away from Vietnam, other than the friendships that I developed there, lifelong friendships, um, and the two guys who sort of took me under their wing because I was like, "What's that over there?" And they say, "Fool, come here before you get hurt." Get out. So, other than those lifelong friendships, the thing I took away from Vietnam that it's like that Edwin Starr song, "War. What is it good for?" Um, right now, we see Russia invading the Ukraine, and who knows what that could lead to, World War III or anything. And so I developed a real strong anti-war attitude in Vietnam after seeing a lot of the results of war, seeing dead bodies and people blown to bits. I mean, I might not have been there when they got blown to bits, but when you see enough of it, it really affects you. And you ask, what is this good for? What is it for? What are we doing here? I went to Vietnam believing, I can remember in high school in debate, I was the only one who wanted to take the side of we should intervene in all of Southeast Asia with all the communism. if we didn't do anything. And they told us that lie. And then, during the Bush administration, they told us Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and we had to get them. Nowadays, they're telling us the Russians are the villain and we got to stop them. So they'll always develop a war for you. Somebody in power is making a whole lot of money, and they don't care about people like you, Noah, or me. We're just young kids, or when I was a young kid like you are now, and we're trying to go to school and see what we're going to develop our minds into and what we're going to be. And they say, oh, come here. I got something for you to do. Here, take this rifle. Take this grenade launcher. Go over there and shoot that guy. Oh, yeah, he's going to shoot back at you. They don't tell you that part, I always say it ain't no fun when the rabbit got a gun. And I have nothing against hunting. If you want to hunt and you're going to consume the meat, that's fine with me. But it ain't no fun when the rabbit got a gun. I'm telling you that right now, when they shoot back at you. And I have been in mortar attacks. There were about 3 times in Vietnam that I was scared for my life. And that's a heck of a feeling. And you just come away with that wondering, what is it good for? What are we doing here? Is this the right thing? And my conclusion was no.
So obviously incredibly powerful there. Like you mentioned, you had been within obviously distance of mortar attacks and you've been through that experience all on your own. So would you do it again if given the opportunity? Would you go back and put yourself through that one more time?
I would, but not for the reasons that I went the first time. I would because looking back of those lifelong friendships that I mentioned, I met 2 guys, one a sergeant named Leroy Perry and another who was a Spec 5 at the time named Andrew Boone. And they were 2 older, world-wise, crap playing, hard drinking guys who just said, come here, college kid. Yes, that's sometimes what they call me. He's a college kid. He's going to get hurt out here if we don't help him. And those friendships have been lifelong. And one of them is deceased now, and one is in poor health, but we're still in communication. And I will love them to the day I die. It is a special bond that you develop for the person who's on either side of you, that if something happened to them, you would march into hell for a heavenly cause to go get them and get them out of that. Fortunately, that never happened with the 3 of us. But if it had have happened to one of them, I'd have gone straight into the teeth of the monster to help him try to get him out. And a lot of times that's when other people get killed. I told you all before that scene from Forrest Gump where he says, I got to find Bubba. That's the exact feeling that you have when they're shooting at you. If somebody's missing, and his lieutenant is telling him, I got fast movers. He got F-4 Phantoms coming in with napalm. Napalm is like jellied gasoline. And if it hits you and it's on fire, you can't brush it off. It's just gonna stick to you and burn. And to go back for Bubba is the same thing I would have done for Boone or for Perry, and somehow tried to find the strength to pick him up and carry him out of there if something had happened. Even if some fast movers were coming in to nape the joint. That scene from Forrest Gump really gets to me, and it's hard for me to watch every time because I know exactly what he means when the lieutenant says, I'm ordering you not to go, and he says, I got to find Bubba, and he goes. That's the kind of feeling you have for the guy who's beside you. The guy who won't let you down, and you better not let him down. That's the feeling you have. So at that point, it doesn't matter about the politics, why you're there, who sent you there. You're there, and you got to survive, and you got to help the guy next to you that you eventually come to love and say that to. Men, I love you, man. You don't say that. I say that to these guys all the time. I love you, man. We in every phone call like that. I love you, man. So And that was 50 years ago. So what are you gonna do?
Easy to think about the bad things that could have or did happen in Vietnam. So let's think about some of the good things with Perry and Boone, especially. Do you have a day or even just a specific event that you remember with those two guys that's kind of your good memory to look back on at that time in Vietnam?
One thing I remember was mail call. Perry used to do the mail call, and he'd have a box under his arm, and he'd be delivering out of Johnson, Smith, McGillicuddy, Andrews, son, Boone, and he'd just be passing out mail, and he'd end up, last thing he had was his box. I said, man, what's that box under there, y'all? Oh, come on, follow me. All right, we go back to his hooch, and it would be a care package from my father that he opened. And it would be full of things like he sent sardines and crackers and barbecue potato chips and Oreo cookies. He knew I liked a certain brand of barbecue potato chips, and I liked Oreo cookies. And he sent these sardines, and my father was a cook in the Navy, and he'd make this seasoned salt. And we would get those sardines and put them on crackers and sprinkle that salt on it and eat the barbecue potato chips and down it with the Oreos. And they'd be drinking beer. And if I could get pop or water, that's what I would be drinking. But we would be sitting there laughing and talking, and you would think we were eating caviar or something. And it would all go in the space of about an hour in his hooch. And we'd all smell like sardines when we came out of there. So it smelled like sardines and beer or pop or something. And I remember that as a real fun time. And it was like there was no way you could hoard it if you got a care package. Everybody knew what it was in a big box. And they'd open it up, and man, everybody grabbed a can of sardines and some crackers, and we would just be laughing and talking and maybe playing cards. That'd be at night when there was some downtime. But if I ever remember anything that was fun, it would be something like that.
Oh, so it was the simpler things that pleased you then, huh?
Yeah, it was easy to enjoy something like that when, especially if you're in a unit where it's kind of like an episode of MASH, you're going through the dinner line, and they're going, and you're looking at it like, what in the hell is that? You know, it doesn't even look edible, really. That's another thing MASH got right. Some of the mess halls were very good. In fact, I figured out a way to get at least one good meal a day, depending on where we were hauling from. And I would do that, and Boone followed me to see what the hell was going on. But there was an asphalt plant on the air base at Benoit, and it was right next to an Air Force mess hall. And I would run to the front of the line at the asphalt plant, try to be the first one over there. So when you had to drive 30 miles by yourself out to the end of pavement, and then you dump your load of asphalt and they'd be paving the road, you turn around and have to come 30 miles back. Now it's 30 miles on a 2-lane highway that's, you know, there's no telephone poles, there's just no lines on it, and you just drive. And by the time you get back to the asphalt plant and get in line again, it was 11:30, and you could go in the Air Force mess hall. Now we looked like death riding a ham sandwich. The Air Force guys were all, you know, crisp and clean because everybody had their own Vietnam, and they were on the Air Force. They had movie theaters and all that kind of stuff. I think I saw a Telly Savalas movie once at Firebase Mace, and they had a big sheet that they just strung up somewhere and projected the movie on a sheet or something like that. And we were all sitting on, you know, with our weapons on, sitting on pieces of armor and trucks and watching this cowboy movie or something like that. But the Air Force had everything on Benoit. And so I would time my runs when I could get back there, and they had cold chocolate milk. No. Oh man, and all that heat. I'd sit there You could get a cheeseburger that tasted like a cheeseburger. You could get vegetables that weren't just limp and wimpy, or if you wanted that, you could get fries. You could get it. They had cold chocolate milk, Noah, ice cold chocolate milk. And I would go in there, and they, even though we looked like, who done it and why, with oil and raggedy and all that sort of stuff all over us, they would let us in there, and we would go eat with the Air Force. So I timed my run. And at first they thought I was sucking up because I would run to be the first in line, the truck at the asphalt plant. But what I was trying to do was the time to run, to go all the way out to the end of the pavement, drop my load, and come back. And right there, they'd open up the mess hall. Man, I would run in there and load up. And when we ran out the pavement plant, I always got one good meal a day, and all the cold chocolate milk that I could drink.
Thank God you weren't lactose, right?
Yeah, lactose intolerant. Oh, I always loved chocolate milk, but to get, some people had everything. In Air Force, they had better mess halls, they had better chow, they had everything, man. The stuff we had was like, who done it and why?
Like you had mentioned, you said that MASH had gotten a couple things, right? Like the mess halls in the Army.
Oh, the mess hall we had was just like the mess hall at MASH, when they go, poof, and you look at it like, what? I had a little dog once. I went to the line, and they gave us some boiled ham. And it just looked like something out of a horror movie. Just it almost looked like it was moving. And so I took it out to where you take your tray outside, and I took the ham and threw it to my dog on the ground, and she looked at me like, "What is it? Am I supposed to eat this?" I don't think so. I said, well, I got nothing else. You're gonna have to eat that. And she would eventually eat it, but she'd look at me like, you won't, are you serious? Okay. And she would eat it, but she didn't want to. And I know I didn't want to. So in fact, I think my last 3 months in Vietnam, when we got away from the Air Force base, and we were up in Swan Lock and Firebase Mace, I think I lived on Tootsie Rolls, ice water, and Chuckles. You know what Chuckles are?
Not aware.
Those little gelatin candies with sugars on them. Sugar. They came 5 in a pack, and when you're in the boonies, they have a table they call SPs, special privileges or special packages. And there'd be shaving cream and razors, writing paper and pens, cigarettes. They gave away cigarettes. A lot of guys got hooked on smoking and never got off. I even smoked then, because you didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. So you weren't thinking about 50 years would your lungs be all clogged up after years of smoking. And they had candy too. And 2 favorite candies they had was these big long, I don't know if you ever seen the big long Tootsie Rolls, not the little ones, but the big ones. They look like a big cigar when you put them in your mouth.
With the paper wrapping on them, right?
Yeah, Yep. And we had what we call Captain Kangaroo pockets on the side of our fatigues, these side pockets. And I would just fill them up with Chuckles and Tootsie Rolls. And I bought, one time I was on Long Beach, I bought a little yellow and white igloo cooler, and I would get ice they did have ice, and I would get ice every day and fill it up with water. I always liked water. And all I would do all day, I'd have a Tootsie Roll in my mouth like a cigar driving. And then I'd stop somewhere and drink some water, and then I'd eat some Chuckles, and I didn't eat anything. The only reason I would go in the mess hall was to get something for Bigham, my dog. And sometimes she'd look at me like, what are you giving me? But I never ate in the mess hall the last 3 months in Vietnam.
So that special privileges that you mentioned, or SP, like you called it, that's something that I, as a civilian, was totally unaware that they had. Was just like little stands, kind of grab and go. You made it seem. What is another thing that civilians maybe don't understand, but it's so common for people who are in services to see when they're overseas?
I don't know. I think people just need to travel more and see what it's like in different countries. For me, that was eye-opening. And I think I told you the story of how we used to demean them and call them certain derogatory names until one day I almost ran over somebody just because I was in a bigger truck than he was. And he defended his ground and made me stop and back up and go around him. And it came, I don't know, just a epiphany. It came over me that you in this man's country, you're going down the road on the wrong side of the road, running everybody off the road and calling them names, very derogatory names. And all of a sudden I just stopped doing it. And I think it was what they did for indoctrination. Everybody called the Vietnamese a certain name. It ain't nothing but a blank. And when I did that one day, I stopped and I would stop everybody who were doing it. And I'd say, that's same, this is the way we talk to it, same. That's same you call me nigga in the world. And they'd stop and they'd be all shocked. I said, yeah, if you call him a goop, you're making him less than human. And so it's easy to kill him. He's ain't nothing but a goop. Well, that's just like ain't nothing but a nigga in the world. And people would stop and say, are you for real? I said, yeah, I'm for real. And so I would stop people from doing it. I stopped them from doing it in my presence. It didn't stop them from doing it. But I think that was the way we dehumanized the Vietnamese and made them less than human. And so it was easy to kill them, whether you ran over them in a truck, or a tank, a piece of armor, or you shot them or whatever. It's nothing but a goop. Shrug your shoulders at it. And then you come home after doing it and it messes with you for the rest of your life. And you got PTSD and everything else, the stuff you didn't think about then when you were indoctrinated to do it just that way.
So it seems that that has maybe left a lasting impact on you that you maybe didn't anticipate going into your time in the services.
Well, I think we all have lessons to learn, you know? And that's one lesson I learned in my youth. Don't follow the leader. Don't do what everybody else does. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. You know, and I stopped driving like that. I stopped driving. I mean, we drove like we were in NASCAR. If we picked up base rock at the quarry about 15 clicks above Saigon and had to drive 50 miles to the end of pavement to stretch out more base rock before we could lay more asphalt, they had front loaders that were so big they could load you in one scoop. So when we pulled out to the main highway, which, believe it or not, above Saigon was a 4-lane highway, and it was busy. I mean, there were buses, trucks, cars, military vehicles, civilian vehicles, 5 people on one moped, you know, Papa Son's driving, Mama Son sitting sideways, holding baby Son, boy Son's on the handlebars, and girl Son's on the gas tank. And they're going down the road. And we would pull out there in those trucks and pop the clutch and make it rear up, you know, almost like a horse. You can make the front wheels come off the ground, boom. Just pop the clutch, boom. And the first 2 trucks would start popping the clutch like that, and all the traffic would stop, and then 50 trucks would come out. We rule the road, get out the way. And we went down the road, bumper to bumper, side to side, just like NASCAR. Whoa. And everybody had to get out the way. Here come 50 trucks, bumper to bump down, and then it eventually got into 2-lane, and we never changed. Just like NASCAR, bumper to bumper and side to side, going as fast as we could go. And the trucks were governed down to about 60 miles an hour, but that was about as fast as any vehicle on the road went. And everything had to get out of our way. Cars, trucks, buses, unless it was a piece of armor, something bigger than us, it had to get out of the way. And we would drive for 50 miles like that, believe it or not, shoulder to shoulder, but because the trucks were all about the same. So if you were passing somebody, you might be able to pass them. You might be 1 mile an hour faster than them going by them like that. Hey! And then you come into a curve and they catch you, and then we'd all be all together again. And it was just stupid. But we used to do that because you didn't care. And it wasn't nothing but a gook. So if you killed it, if you ran over them, if they didn't get out the way, And that day that I almost ran over somebody, that's when I stopped doing that.
So
And it did make a lasting impression on my life.
So you've obviously grown and had a lot of time to mature and self-inflect and self-reflect since then. If you had the opportunity to go back and tell yourself one thing on your flight over to Vietnam, what would you say to yourself?
On the flight over?
Yep. You've never been there before. You're fresh out of college and headed into the services for the first time. What would you give yourself?
I don't know. I don't know if I had enough imagination to think about what was going to happen or what I was going to do. But the flight home, my thought was, as we lifted off from Long Bend and you get over the countryside, you think for just 1 minute and everybody's cheering, you lifting off. I mean, it felt like if all 4 engines on that jet had quit, it wouldn't fall out the sky because there was enough energy inside it from everybody cheering to keep it in the air. But I looked out the window and I said, what if I see a rocket trail coming at us? You know, you could see it, the smoke from it as it came up. And I said, what if I see some tracers or something coming? What if they try to shoot us down? And on the way home, 100 and some of us die because they shot down a civilian airliner as we were trying to leave. And that was the only thought I had then. And after that, it was just back to the world. I'm glad to be back. So I don't think I was thinking any heavy thoughts going over there. I wasn't scared. Almost everybody I saw who was scared and said they weren't coming back didn't. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When my father looked at me when I was leaving Little Rock, and he said, how you get in the Army? We Navy men. I said, yeah, I'll be back in a year, Dad. Don't worry about it. Nothing but a meatball. And that was my attitude going and coming. I knew I was going to survive. I was going to do whatever it took to survive. And I saw people do other stupid things like drugs. One night we came in off the road after we moved up to Swan Lot, and there's absolutely nothing to do. If you and I are friends and you got guard duty tonight, I'm coming out to the bunker to just sit with you for a couple of hours because there wasn't nothing else to do. So I'd come out there and sit and talk with you, and we'd laugh and look at it, look around and spray the mosquitoes and all that kind of stuff, and nothing else to do. And I came off the road one time and this guy said, Mo, come on with us. I said, where you going, man? We're going up on the water tower and drop some mescaline. Mescaline, what is that? He said, oh man, you'll like it. I said, well, how do you feel? Oh man, it's great. You'll see things. I said, you see things? He said, yeah. I said, like what? He said, you'll see reds and yellows and blues. And just about that time, an F4 Phantom went over our heads. Wow. And went out over the rice paddy. And when he got to the tree line, he let go some napalm. And it was getting dark. It was about dark. And all that red and it looked like blue and everything. I said, you see all that red and blue over there? I'm scared to death seeing the real stuff that's happening here, let alone go up there and see something that's not there. I said, what if you see a ladder that's not there and you try to climb off that? Oh man, it's not like that. You should go on and come on with us. I said, man, you getting ready to go up on the tallest structure in this compound and sit on the roof of it and drop some drug that makes you see things? Ain't nobody gonna write no letter home saying I fell off the water tower while I was on drugs, and that's how I got killed in Vietnam. I said, that ain't gonna happen to me. Y'all go on, man. And they would say I was a stick in the mud or something like that. Nope. I don't need it. I'm seeing enough stuff that scares me to death that I don't need to see something that is not real. And so I saw people, almost in their lives using drugs. And I saw people like if we were sitting out in the bunker and you had guard duty and I was just out there shooting the breeze with you, and some guy came out there and he would smoke some heroin or well, how else did they use it? They generally smoked it. They put it in the end of a cigarette and light it up and they asked you if you wanted some. I know, man, I don't want some. If something happened, if a round came in and somebody started shooting at us, there was a commercial, used to be for some breakfast cereal. I don't know, it was Cheerios or whatever when I was young. And they showed this lethargic kid and they said, what's wrong with him? Oh, he has no energy. He's got the slows. Here, eat some Cheerios. And then the kid would be running around on Frosted Flakes, whatever it was, and they'd have all kind of energy. I call those guys having the slows because they'd hit that stuff, or they'd had OJs. They'd have a little vial, look like an iodine bottle. And on the marijuana cigarette, they take the little glass thing out and coat the marijuana with that. And they smoke that and they be like that. And if a round came in, they were like, oh man, what's going on? And I said I never wanted to be like that, where I could not defend myself, where they would, anybody else, including the guys who were just smoking marijuana, they could react, but those guys were like, oh man. I saw one guy, and he was a brother. I was coming off the road in Swan Lock one time, and he was standing on the side of the road hitchhiking. He had come up from Long Bend looking for a brothel to go to. And he was so high. Now, if you're standing up, the bumper or the fender of the truck is like face high to you. That's how big these trucks are. And I pulled up and I said, what is this guy doing out here? And it's almost dark. He doesn't have a weapon or anything. And he was hitchhiking. He said, and I slowed the truck and just about come to a stop. And he walked right into the bump in the fender, boom, and busted his lip. And he was bleeding. I said, man, what are you doing? And man, I got to get to Long Bend tonight. I said, well, I ain't going to Long Bend. I'm going right here in Swan Lake. You need to get in the truck with me. You ain't gonna find no trucks on the road going along. No, man, I got to get back or they're gonna be able. I said, you need to get in the truck with me. And he wouldn't do it. And I don't know what happened to him. He might be some bones laying over there now in the rice paddy. I don't know. Because I knew he wasn't gonna make it to Long Bend that night unless he got really lucky. But there he was without a weapon, stoned out of his mind. He's so much so that he walked into the truck and busted his lip, and he was bleeding down. I gotta get to Long Bend. I said, I ain't going to Long. Man, you can't take me to Long Bend. No, man, I can't take you to Long Bend. It'd be dark on that road coming back. I ain't getting killed. You need to get in the truck and go with me and stay here in this compound tonight. Oh man, I said, you ain't even on the road. The section is go. You need to be way out here to catch something going to Long Bend. Oh man, and I don't know what happened to him. He could be dead as a doornail. He could be president of some marijuana distribution company. I don't know, but he was loaded, man, and I have no idea what happened to him.
Too many things to focus on to distract your mind, right?
Well, you could easily get distracted if you let yourself get distracted, and boredom was sometimes part of the job. Vietnam was described by a lot of people as hours of boredom separated by 5 or 10 minutes of sheer panic. When something would happen, you might be sitting around going, man, I can't wait. I got 6 months. How much time you got, Noah? I can't wait till I get out this joint. Oh, you say, oh man, I got 4 months. Oh yeah, we both got some time to do. Oh man, what the heck? Well, how long we gonna be here? So you be bored out of your mind, and then all of a sudden a round comes in. Oh shit! You start shooting back, and even if there was nothing to shoot at, you might not even see something to shoot at. You just want to deter anything that was out there. And so you'd shoot, and and then all of a sudden when all the shooting stopped, it get real quiet. The animals stop making noise, and it get real quiet. And then the noise will start to come back in the night. You go. So Vietnam was like hours of boredom separated by 5 or 10 minutes of sheer panic.
So my final question for you, Chris, is do you have any regrets from your time in Vietnam? Anything that you'd wish you had done or wish you had done differently while you were over there?
I wish I'd learned quicker not to dehumanize people, human beings. But I guess that lesson comes to people when it comes. When I would tell people that same you called me nigga in the world, and they went, huh? What are you talking about? Maybe I planted the seed, maybe it grew. But for me, it was a realization where I almost killed somebody and I would have been in the wrong. And in fact, I was trying to pass, the reason I was in the wrong lane, I was trying to pass a bus. And you haven't lived until you've seen some of these buses in third world countries that are packed with everybody, they're all their belongings, a couple of chickens, and about 5 young teenagers hanging off the back of the bus, literally standing on the bumper and holding on to the ladder or the window or whatever, riding on the back of the bus, going down the road at 35 miles an hour. And I'm trying to pass them. And a counselor who dealt with Vietnamese veterans, Vietnam veterans, Arto Woods, I never forget when I told him that story. He said, you remember that guy you skidded up to and almost ran over? Yeah, he said, what if you'd moved over on the bus and run it off the road and killed 45 people? And so you wouldn't be Chris Moore on TV and on radio now. You'd be sitting in groups smoking cigarettes, talking about it and how you did it and how you made that mistake. So, that it's not scriptural, but I think it's true that God takes care of babies and fools. And I think I was a fool, but I was a fool who learned quick with the aid of Boone and Perry. And some of my own actions taught me things not to do. Some people never learn that. I knew guys who'd be riding shotgun in a truck and they'd be passing, somebody on a bicycle, and they'd open the door just to try to hit them and knock them off the bicycle. They used to do that because they were bored. We used to call it being bored shitless. Can you quote me on that? And so they would do cruel things like that. We went on a convoy once, and I had some infantry in the back with a lot of stuff, and they had mounted a 60 caliber machine gun on the headache board above my cab. And there was a water buffalo out in the field, and the guy just turned the machine gun on it and shot it, and it fell down. And I said, man, what are you doing? And that's some farmer's water buffalo that he used to plow the rice paddies or whatever he was doing. You just killed his livelihood. Only thing he can do is eat it now. But that's not worth much to him. But people did cruel things like that. They did it all the time. And if you told them, don't do that, they say, oh, it ain't nothing but because it was okay to dehumanize even their beast of burdens and kill them. I said, say your ammo. We going up in Ambush Alley. You have something to shoot at. And they looking at me like I'm crazy, for telling them don't do that. So I don't know. You just sometimes if you got your eyes open, you'll learn. But it took me 6 months. It took because I fell right into the indoctrination. I was doing the same thing that they were doing, until that day I almost killed that guy. And then when Arto told me years later, suppose you had moved over on the bus and run them off the road. And I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. I'd be somewhere doing something, and who knows what.
Well, I'm glad we are here to talk about it, Chris. I thank you so much for your time and your stories. I really appreciated it.
Okay, well, I hope is it your grandfather?